welcome everybody to a special edition of CEO Chat. My name is Al Cini.
And I'm Joe Osamendi.
And you know, we were just talking. We've been doing this program now for 2 years.
Yeah.
We have never had a better guest than Marian Baldini, who's our guest today. And Marian, it's such a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
I'll catch you later. But you are the CEO of KenCrest, and it's a not-for-profit, but a big, substantial company with a terrific mission. And before the program, we were talking about how we as a society often pride ourselves in our ability to cure illnesses. Mm-hmm. But the reality, the real proof point of a mature society is its ability to support people in conditions that can't be cured. And for me, anyway, the KenCrest mission is really about providing that level of support, not just for the people who are affected, but also their families, that holistic approach that we're talking about.
Right.
Maybe you can outline the KenCrest programs for us, and we can talk about how you accomplish all that.
Thanks. There's really three primary things that we do. We have early learning centers. And our early learning centers are special because kids with disabilities and kids who are typically developing are together, and we make no distinction. So if you walked in, you wouldn't know who was who. And I think we're really a role model of how to do that really well. We also have early intervention services. So we're probably the first people who meet the family once they learn this child has a disability. And this could be even in the hospital when the child is born. And we serve those children from birth until age 5 in the home and with the family, helping the child develop and also helping the family grow in confidence.
Oh, that's great.
And then we support adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities, have a meaningful life, and for many of them find employment.
Oh, that's terrific. We have a couple of pictures that Marian sent ahead. We'll go through those and talk to them. Maybe you can just tell us what's going on in some of these pictures?
Seeds of purpose. We actually have a greenhouse, and the greenhouse produces two things. It produces these flowers that we sell in the community, and some of them I buy too. And it also produces herbs for a local restaurant. And the local restaurant did not know that the herbs were being grown by people with disabilities. He just knew it was a really good place to get herbs.
Oh, no kidding. Which is as it should be. I mean, it shouldn't be, I mean, a good product is a good product. That's terrific.
Yeah.
Where is that greenhouse?
It's in the Pottstown area. Most people know that town. So.
And by that gets us to a discussion of where KenCrest does the great work it does.
KenCrest is in Pennsylvania primarily, but we also have services in Connecticut and in Delaware.
Okay, great.
How long has KenCrest been around?
Since 1905.
Wow.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Long time.
Here's another photo you might want to
Here's another picture. Maybe you can talk about what's going on here.
We have individuals who are medically fragile. Individuals who use wheelchairs, some of them have special feeding requirements, some of them need special 24-hour nursing care, and a number of them have come from institutions. Pennsylvania at the moment is really working hard to close its institutions. So for those folks, we actually help them have a life. So they may be going fishing for the first time in their life, or we had a group who had trick-or-treaters come to his house for the first time in his life. One guy has developed a love of delivery trucks. So he's by the window, and then when the FedEx guy comes, he's right there ready to go out and find out what's being delivered.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's cool.
Next picture, children's programs, I think.
Early learning centers. Those early learning centers are overseen by a program called Keystone Stars, where if you're an early learning center, regardless of your mission, you can actually go after those stars as proof of your quality. All of our 5 centers have the maximum number of stars. And if you went there, you would be hard-pressed once you got inside to realize these are some of the poorest neighborhoods in the city of Philadelphia, and these kids are getting a top-shelf early learning opportunity.
Oh, wow, that's great. And one more, I guess?
Oh, these are just kids playing a game. You know, the kids in the early learning centers are doing 2 really important things. They're getting ready for school in terms of their academics, and they're also getting ready for school in terms of their emotional maturity. And what's being discovered is that you can prepare children academically, but if they're not ready emotionally for kindergarten, they really struggle. So in our programs, we prepare children academically, and we also prepare them emotionally.
Okay, great. So Marian, I guess in terms of the early intervention program, you're called in pretty much by the doctor who makes the diagnosis, I suppose. That's where you become engaged.
Right.
Okay, you pick up, and you help the children in the homes where they live.
Right.
But the I think the great thing about what you do is it's not just about the child with the problem. It's about making the whole family strong enough to be able to to be able to
that's the
cope.
interesting thing, is, for the most part, we're judged against the outcomes for the children, which is right, because the children are the ones who are being funded. But the most important thing is that when we leave, that family feels confident, and they're ready for the next chapter in their life. So that's really critical for us, and we're so proud of that. And the families are sorry to see us, move on to the next chapter. So it's pretty cool.
Great. And then you've got adult programs too, residential
We do.
community.
We do have adult programs.
It's a residential homes, I think you were.
We have, well, most people would know them as group homes. And they're all over our neighborhoods. You might notice them because that's the house that's most likely to have a ramp on the front, or a van, a wheelchair accessible van. But our homes are all over. We have about 190 homes in the 3 states where we serve, and 1 to 4 people will live in a home. A few of our homes are very specially equipped with track systems or specialized accessible showers and things like that because of the needs of the people. And some of them are just look like your house or my house.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we worked really hard to get you booked today because we're in the Christmas season and people are in the mood to give to people who need help. And I knew an awful lot of people were not aware of the great work that KenCrest does, and I saw this as an opportunity to try to spread the word.
Sure.
If large corporations out there that might be looking to be benefactors, but you, as you said, the thousands of small donations really make a huge difference too.
Yeah, it's really good. We have, it's interesting at KenCrest, we have a culture of generosity. So our staff give also. So I always like to know that a company is doing for its own and it's also doing for the community. So we do the same thing. So every year we have something called the Rod Hibbard Fund, which is a fund where our employees donate through payroll deductions and other ways to a fund that helps staff in an emergency. So we have many staff who are relatively low income workers who, if they were hit with a deductible or a heater problem, wouldn't have that money in the bank to fund it. So our staff fund that. And since that started, we've given out over $300,000 to employees in need in small grants for emergencies. And then every year we have the Harvey Davis Family Fund, and that family fund buys small gifts for children and their families. So it's not just the child that we serve. Every child in that family will get a gift through the fund.
Oh, that's nice.
And then ongoing during the year, we solicit donations for the things that we do. Because while we do get funding from the government, it doesn't pay for everything. So it wouldn't fund your vacation. It might not have enough money to go to a ball game or something like that. So donations that are small like that are going to help somebody get to the Phillies game or the Eagles, right? And a donation that's big, like a van or a generator or something like that, is going to have a bigger impact. So donations are always welcome.
Small and large both as a
Small and
combination.
large.
And you really
both.
need them, whatever, and
Yes, you do.
and you've got a lot of needs, like you said, transportation requirements, and
Right.
I mean there are a whole bunch of things that make KenCrest work, and
Right.
every donation applies directly to
Yes.
that, which is pretty
And what's
exciting
nice
work.
is a donor can tell us, this is what we want you to do. We want you to buy books for children. We want you to buy musical instruments for the
Right.
early learning centers, and that's what we will do with their donation.
Good.
And you're composed of a lot of volunteers as well as employees, is that correct?
We do have volunteers. There's nowhere as many as there used to be in the old days, I would say.
Okay.
But we do have some very special volunteers. And they come in and they learn that they'll get more than they thought they were going to give. One woman, her name is Kathleen, she volunteers at our Chester County location, and she is learning what the people like to do, and very quickly they're learning about her life. So one day she told them she was going to go on vacation because she was going to visit her grandchildren, and when they came back, the individuals that she was helping said, "How was your visit?" She broke her shoulder, and they wrote a get well card. So, she didn't expect that. She thought she was going to give of her time, and she had no guess that she would get so much back. So that's what volunteering means, I think.
That's, well, I mean, that really is it,
Yeah.
and then the giving is the getting.
Right.
I
And
mean, that's,
we're really very interested in volunteers in our early learning centers because we now have babies. And babies like to be held. So if someone just had time and didn't have money, just call us up and we'll see if we can connect you to a baby.
that's great. A little later on in the program, you'll tell people how to reach out to KenCrest to help with money or their time, and I think both are great opportunities. But, before the program, Joe asked you the question. It's kind of like Make-A-Wish. Not exactly. I mean, there's some things, though, you've done for some of the people you serve where you've taken them places they've never been and made their lives more, I want to say meaningful. I mean, creating meaningful lives for people is what you do.
Right.
So maybe you can tell us a story or two about that.
Well, there's 2 stories from this year that I like. They're my favorites, I guess. One was a gentleman in Connecticut, and he only wanted to go to Jamaica. He didn't want anything else. He didn't want to go grocery shopping. He didn't want to go to work. He just wanted to go to Jamaica. Well, Jamaica's a little distance from Connecticut, and he needs special equipment like a Hoyer lift and whatever. So staff decided to try and talk him into Cape Cod, which was only 4 hours away. So he agreed. So he did what most people do before they go to the beach. He got some beach clothes, got himself ready, and staff decided that as soon as they got there, they were going directly to the sand. So when he got to the sand, he looked. He had never seen the ocean before, and he asked him if it was paradise.
Wow.
Wow.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Well,
And
that makes everybody's life meaningful, not just his.
And
that's
the staff were so nervous because they didn't know, is that hotel really accessible? And was that Hoyer lift really going to be delivered to that hotel room?
Right.
And it all worked out.
Wow. Now, the people you help have cognitive disorders. Maybe you can profile that for us a little bit.
Yeah, most people would know of old language like mental retardation. We don't use that word
We
anymore.
don't use that anymore, I know.
We call them developmental or intellectual disabilities. So these are individuals who are not going to get the same academic scores that we got, but that doesn't mean that they can't work and contribute in meaningful ways. So we have to look for how can we help make the environment work for them and help them contribute. But everybody is entitled to be included.
Yeah, sure. And now that, to me anyway, that's kind of a cutting edge difference. The people that work for Kencrest are more than just nurses. It's not just about taking care of people's physical needs. It's about taking them off the shelf and putting them in the world and trying to give them a role that they can play.
Right.
So how do you manage that? How do you?
Well, it's interesting. You have to teach. You have to teach what you expect, but you also have to hire people with the right values. So there was an old movie about high school football, and in the high school football movie, the kid on there's racial tension. So these white kids and black kids, and they're the town is really upset because now they're playing on the same team. So the white kid gets injured, and the black kid goes to the hospital, and the white kid says, he's my brother, you have to let him in. So you think, well, how can he be his brother because he's not the same color? So the nurse lets him in. Well, I went to visit one of our homes once, and one of the gentlemen had Down syndrome, and he also had Alzheimer's. And I met his caregiver who was black, and he took me to the guy's room, and he said, "I'd like you to meet my dad."
Wow. Really?
That's
So when you think about someone as someone you love in your family, and you want that person to have a life, that's really what we're trying to do.
Oh, that's terrific. We need to take a break. I mean, we have a lot more to talk about. We'll be back after with a great guest, Marian Baldini, who has a terrific message for an organization called Kencrest.
College ranked top 50 in the nation.
Basically, we earn more and pay less.
RCBC students are accepted at Rowan University after graduation
and get a bachelor's degree for around $30,000.
Online and Mount Laurel students get a 15% Rowan University tuition discount.
And have many scholarship opportunities.
So you earn more and pay even less.
Rowan College in Burlington County.
Your path to success.
They are the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen. But what does it take to strengthen our service members? What does it take to let them know that we stand behind them, wherever they are? What does it take to bridge the distance and keep them connected to family, home, and country? And what does it take to prepare them for their future when their service to the nation is complete? What does it take to strengthen our service members so they can be the greatest force for good in the world? It takes a force. Be a force behind the forces. Share a message today at force.uso.org.
I want to be a contender. I want a warm belly to sleep on.
A big house. How do I look? Do I look good?
I want to play hard.
My nails done once a month.
I want
a home. I just want a home. I want someone to love.
Last year, more than 30,000 companion animals came to us without homes. 20,000 of them were felines. Let's make some homes together.
Not back yet, right? Now we're back.
No, now
Welcome
we're
back to CEO Chat. I'm Al Cini,
I'm Joe Osamendi.
and our guest is Marian Baldini, and we were just talking about the joy of following a kitten commercial on television. There's no way we could be that cute,
No.
but we can be that meaningful. We're talking about KenCrest, which is a fine organization that serves a community that needs help, and you've been doing it for over a century, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
How did you get to be the CEO of KenCrest? Maybe you can tell that story. I think it's great.
It's an interesting story because I did my first work out of college at KenCrest. So I was a direct care worker. My husband got me the job. And I was a summer, they called them relief worker, summer relief worker, and then I worked weekends. And then I got my first professional job and left KenCrest, and then went off and worked at Elwyn and other places. And a recruiter called me out of the blue, and they were looking for someone for KenCrest. And I thought, I always liked them. They were always nice. I have a warm place in my heart for them. I'll call her back and see what she's looking for. So I go through this whole conversation. Like 10 minutes later, it dawns on her that I don't get it. That they wanted to talk to me. I'm trying to find out what do they really need, asking her all these questions. And so she said, well, I don't want a referral. I want you. And I was like, well, I'm not looking. So she said, well, just give me a shot, And I was like, oh, okay, I'll talk to you, but I don't know, So I went to the first interview and I thought, wow, they might actually be looking for me. So it was a long process, but I was really, really delighted.
I bet you were thrilled about
It's
it.
kind
And
of a
how long
bookend
ago
thing.
was this? You've been CEO for how
3
long?
years. It's just 3 years.
For 3 years. Well, happy
3
anniversary.
years.
And I can't think of I can't think of a job that could be more rewarding. I mean,
It's
really,
amazing. It's a great job.
I have to imagine, just knowing just the stories you tell, a few stories we've heard. I know they're just a few of several, many, hundreds probably, of lives you've changed and made better, and it's a not-for-profit, and we don't often get to talk to people who are CEOs of not-for-profits, and that's it requires a unique skill set to stay on the mission of the organization, and yet still count the nickels and dimes and make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to work. How do you manage all that?
Well, you're really managing two things. You're trying to manage the quality of the service and then the administrative things that are behind. So when we did our strategic plan, we wrote goals for both sides. So we wrote goals that will help us focus on the achievement of the families and the individuals. And then we wrote goals that will help us be economically accountable and innovative. So you have to do both, especially in our space where most of our services are funded for low-income people. So we're never going to have a great rate. We're never going to be able to charge the price. The price is whatever they're willing to offer, and we take it or we leave it, right? So we balance all the time between being creative and focusing on quality, and also being good business practices behind it.
Well, that's great. So it's not about doing the same thing over and over again. You do have to keep up with the times. And you mentioned before the program about technology is now becoming an integral part of the service you deliver.
Yeah, and
Maybe
what's
you can talk about that.
interesting is, I've heard some for-profit companies talk lately about matching your client services brand and your employee brand into one, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're using technology on the office side to be efficient, but we're also looking how is technology going to impact the lives of the people that we support and their families. So about a year and a half ago, we came across this new technology from Ireland called a Veil, and it puts in the pocket of the people with a disability directions, and many of our individuals can't read. Or they read at a very basic level. So they need something that's going to remind them that's visual or auditory or video. So we can actually put that audio video in their pocket. And then rather than being prompted by a person or rather than worrying about, picture boards, which we used to be awkward and hard to carry, they can just pull out their iPad or their iPhone and we'll tell them exactly what to do. That's going to make it possible for people to feel good about themselves, be able to do things without someone prompting them. And, I don't know about you, but I really don't want to be followed around the house by my husband telling me what to do.
No,
so
nobody
it's
does.
just like that, right? So they can do it themselves. So it's very cool.
So you can use this technology to empower a person who may not otherwise be able to do a job to do that job without having to be supervised, because that's always an issue on the employer's end. how much attention do I have to pay? I can only afford so much.
Yeah, and what's cool is that you could program a task in there, and so if someone is assigned to do a specific task, the whole task can be in there. So an individual doesn't have to remind them; they can just remind themselves.
Right, that's cool.
And then if there's a new task, you can upskill them to do a new task by putting the new task in there. And the same things for things around the house. You know, folding your wash, or setting the table, or brushing your teeth, or you know, some of them are even more complicated tasks.
Things we take for granted.
we
that
take for
gives them
granted.
Things that we
independence.
take for granted, but
Right,
people
right.
with those disabilities have a great deal of
And you know, it's not
difficulty
going
with
to
it.
replace human relationships, but it is going to make it possible for us to work in a world where we just don't have enough workers. You know, if you look at our industry at the national level, if you talk to people in the senior world, the people in schools, people in early learning centers, we're having trouble getting that frontline worker because there's just not enough of them in the population.
So
It's a demographic issue.
you're tapping into an underutilized segment of society,
Right.
finding talent where people never used to look,
Right.
and making people productive too, which makes them live
Right.
whole lives. And I want to get back to the fact that you do this not just for the individual, but for their whole family.
Right.
I mean, that's an important part of the value proposition of Kencrest, isn't it?
It is. You know, I just, you know, in the month of November, it was all these anniversaries, you know, National Down Syndrome Month, National Physical Therapy Month. So I actually got to interview a mom who has, her child's 3.5 now, and we met him at birth. And she said, I never felt anything but smart when I met with your therapist.
Really?
And she said, you know, I had a choice when I was pregnant. They told me my child was going to have a disability, and I chose to have him, and I feel like I can handle it. I can do it.
I can do it, I can manage
And when
it now.
she says people still, because there's still stigma attached to people with disabilities, she still hears like, what are you going to do with him?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And she said, I'm sending him to school.
Right.
Wow.
That's what I'm going to do with
Yeah.
him. You know,
Well, you know
and,
what?
then, and then I want him to be on the track team.
Right.
She
Well,
says, I think he's a runner.
well,
'Cause I guess he
and you know, and
runs.
if you can take a family and give them what they need to see a diagnosis
Right.
as something other than a catastrophe, because it's a
It's hope.
derailing piece of information for any family to get. If you can find hope in that,
Right.
and it sounds like that's what Kencrest does.
Right.
And so, how do you teach your people? I mean, you've got. I'm sure new people join.
Right.
How do you onboard a new caregiver at
Well, we
Kencrest?
just changed our onboarding, and we're looking actually to have technology help us. But people are onboarded in a very personal way. So we give you the basics, and then we actually help you in your house or in your program location learn exactly what you need to do to work with these people. So we'll give you a personal introduction to this individual. How do they like to eat? What do they like to eat? What do they like to do?
Right.
So we're really bonding you to that individual, and then we're trying to follow that very quickly with recognition that's tied to our values. So when we did our strategic plan, we rewrote our values to match our values with the people that we support with the way we support our staff so that they're the
See,
same,
that's,
right? So we're trying to make that kind of sense of consistency. So this year we have this new pin thing. We like pins at Kencrest. Everybody likes pins.
Bling. It looks nice.
Bling, it's a little bling. But we have a pin for exploring possibilities. So if you do something that looks out into the community for a way in which that individual's life can be valued, you'll get a pin for that. And then if you mobilize a resource that will help that individual, you'll pin for that.
Yeah, right.
And then if you empower someone's dream, like those folks that took the gentleman to Jamaica,
Right.
which was really Cape Cod, you'll get a pin for that.
Good.
So we're trying to reinforce and recognize the people for making a dream possible, but it's an everyday life dream. It's not.
Sure.
It's not going to the moon or curing
No,
cancer.
but it is
It's
for
just
these.
your life. It's a dream for your life.
Right.
Well, the trip to Cape Cod is as good as a trip to Jamaica, or even better than a
He's
trip to
pretty
the moon
happy.
for somebody
If you
that.
saw his face, you would have been pretty impressed.
I think what you've taught us just in this brief conversation, Marian, is something that would be of value to any company. That is, if you tie your compensation package, and it doesn't, we're not just talking about money here.
No.
If you tie the way you recognize your people to the values that you're trying to express in your marketplace or to the community you serve, you get better performance.
Right.
And I think we have to give you a lot of credit for that. And for people who are out there watching, if you're a large company with a lot of money to give, or somebody who just has a couple of bucks that they can offer, or some time maybe they can help out with, you got to call Marian Baldini or call Kencrest. Maybe you can tell everybody how to reach you.
Yeah, the fastest way to find us, is most people have the internet, is kencrest.org, and you can just scroll down and you'll see all our programs, and you'll be able to link to donate or ask questions. You can also find my blog there. I blog every week.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Tell a Kencrest story.
Dig deep.
Yeah.
It's a worthy cause. It's a terrific organization. Thank you, Marian, so much
Thanks
for
for
joining
having
us
me.
today.
Thank you, Marian.
Great to
Pleasure
meet you.
meeting you. You're doing a great job.
Oh, really, just such a great organization. And thanks all of you for joining us today on this special edition of CEO Chat. Till next week, I'm Al Cini,
I'm still Joe Osmendi.
and you better always be.
Well, I hope
And we'll see you next week.
Have a great weekend and enjoy it, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.